My brother Riaimuka and I are back again to watch some super duper interesting videos on YouTube. And where are we this time, Alyanka? We are on YouTube. Yeah, I get it. On the Muslim YouTube. Yeah, on the Muslim YouTube. And we are going to watch videos about how horribly people can die in caves. Yeah. Wow, it is fun to get stuck in caves and slowly suffer. That is what everyone wants to see and watch. The most horrific, the most horrific cave deaths ever. Ah, here we go. The Mazdi Cave incident happened on June 24th, 1967. It has been a while since I have been showing you a demo here. At least I am.
That's it. I can calmly exist in this world. The speleologists were going to enter the Misdeo cave to clear some of the deepest passages and make a map. The two leaders of the group had already explored the cave earlier, which calmed the others down. You have claustrophobia. That's it. Let's look at this.
No, I don't. Have you ever had claustrophobic dreams that cause disco discomfort? Yeah, I have. I've had a lot of them, so you understand. I've never really gotten into anything like that. But as a kid I used to climb, and from one side of the couch to the other side, it was unfolded, and there was always a small space there, and I was small, and I always sort of
Crawled through like that.
and there was a moment when I got stuck once. I was so scared, I screamed, "Mom, help." Well, in short, I was about 5 years old. But, well, I didn't develop claustrophobia, but it was creepy. Like you can't move, you're constrained. The depths in the ocean for some reason. I don't even know why. The main thing in your Thailand is don't drown. I wouldn't.
Want to. Koila the rest. This cave was known for its narrow places and only a few areas where you could stand up to your full height. After a few hours, four speleologists realized how difficult the cave was and decided to return to the surface. They noticed that the sky was covered with clouds, but nothing unusual was happening. The rest of the speleologists continued descending until they reached the far passage, which was only 18 inches wide and 12 inches high. And along the bottom there was a small construction site.
Yes, do you understand? Yes.
Well, of course, it's horrible, brutal. Okay, and the group on the surface soon noticed that it started to rain, so they took cover. At first, the rain didn't cause any concern, but the speleologists inside noticed that the water level was rising. When the water rose to a dangerous level, they decided to finish their work and go back, although there were still 3 hours left before the exit.
Holy, 3 hours to go up. The water's flowing. If a storm is starting there at all, just, well, in short, I'll tell you a story. Once, I don't remember, either with Polinka or not with Polinka. We were going to go on an excursion. I don't remember where it was. Either it was here with us, or back in Kiev. It was probably in Kiev. I was probably alone then. That's some kind of thing like that on the subways. And somehow you have to go, so that there's no rain. Because once a couple went on a trip by themselves and they were washed away by the stream and they suffocated right there. It killed them. Well, in short, it was all fun there, yeah. And I thought, I don't want to go on these kinds of excursions. Like, I like different excursions and all that, but I'm not going on this one. Quote, he wanders around underground in closed spaces. Well, I would have gone. No, well, if you know, it's just not equipped here. Like, no one is responsible for you. And so, well, that's understandable, yeah. But listen, here, when you go down, you spend a lot of energy. It's really hard when you're, well, half bent. And going up there is also slippery. The water is just awful. And 3 hours, well, that's a nightmare.
Meanwhile, the group on the surface noticed something terrible. A lake had formed at the entrance to the cave. The speleologists inside did not know how much water was pouring into the cave. The group on the surface ran for help. The speleologists desperately tried to get to the upper chambers, but the water continued to rise, flooding them. Rescuers and hundreds of volunteers worked tirelessly, pumping water out of the cave and pumping oxygen inside, hoping that the speleologists had found a safe place. Unfortunately, all the speleologists died. The tragedy at the Gambier mine happened on the 20th.
And today we have 4 stories. That's a story about people who simply drowned, told in a minute and a half.
Yep. On May 8, 1973, a group of 9 experienced divers planned to dive into the Gambier mine. This mine had one peculiarity. There was only a small opening leading into a cave at a depth of 20 feet. From this opening, a beam of light penetrated into the cave and the lake, which was very convenient for the divers to navigate. This beam was visible throughout almost the entire cave, unless the divers swam too deep into one of the two side caves. At first, everyone agreed that they would dive a maximum of 200 feet to stay in the main cave and see the light. This was their only plan, but on the second day, 4 divers decided to go to the western part of the cave to dive deeper.
What idiots. They got lost there. God, how scary. Just imagine how scary it is to get lost in the dark underwater with limited oxygen. Well, remember all those situations when you're just swimming down for diamonds in Minecraft and then get lost? And in real life, that's just terrifying. Well, I honestly don't think about that, because, you know, I just won't go there. I don't have that fear, because I understand that it simply won't threaten me, because I'm not that risky in that regard. I'd rather live my life peacefully, I hope, and in the best case scenario, but I definitely wouldn't go there. I definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't go to such a place in general. Well, I would too, probably, but the very essence of what you're thinking, damn, they were so scared.
250 feet, which would have been a new record. Well,
maybe that's what got them interested.
D was planned from the start, and it was a big risk because in 1973, the divers were still using regular air tanks, not mixed gas tanks. So they had to be careful when they went down because they could get nitrogen narcosis. As they went down, the pressure would increase and the nitrogen would get into their bloodstream, causing a drunken state. Remember, these divers weren't experienced cave divers. They were more used to regular scuba diving. That made it even more of a risk. They started going down the west side of the cave, and one experienced diver noticed he was getting nitrogen narcosis, so he immediately went back up. A few people followed him and came up too, but 4 of them decided to continue the dive to set a record and get a quick look around before coming up. About a minute later, the group on the surface became concerned, realizing that the 4 divers were about to run out of air. Several people went back into the cave to look for them and found a flashlight and a camera on the bottom, but no sign of the divers. There was another problem that we did not mention: silt. Due to the movements of the 4 divers, a cloud of silt formed on the bottom, which did not settle for a long time. Visibility was reduced, and they could not navigate underwater. Due to lack of oxygen and nitrogen narcosis, the 4 divers drowned. The tragedy at Jacob Lake is now November 23rd.
No, well, this is scary, damn it, going to the depths. Well, morons in experienced affairs. Darwin Award, 1983, and 2 students upside down and was dying there for like 3 days. They have a separate video on their channel, these guys.
To reach the bottom and then float up, but this is a deceptive impression, because in fact it leads to another underwater cave with 3 halls. The first 2 halls are relatively open and easy to get through, but the third hall has a very narrow passage. If you manage to squeeze through, you will find yourself in a 3 meters high room and you will see a very small hole in the far corner, which you can't crawl through. This small tunnel was only 2 feet in diameter, and 2 years ago 2 people died in it, because after they managed to get inside, they were buried under rocks and gravel. As for our two students, they were experienced divers, but not cave divers, and they were trying to get certified as open water instructors. Their instructor, Don, was an incredibly experienced and skilled diver, and he was the one who pulled out the bodies of the two dead people we just talked about. He kept warning everyone to stay away from Jacob's well because it was deadly, and he even tried to seal the small hole that led to the fourth chamber with cement. But the other divers reopened it and left a note there. You can't stop us. Don himself almost died in Jacob's well. When he tried to get into the fourth chamber, he was buried under rocks. He was almost resigned to death. His tank was empty, and he swallowed water. But then the instinct of self-preservation kicked in, and he started moving fast until he cleared enough space to get out. When it's
Crazy. Even I'm starting to feel some kind of anxiety. Just listening to it takes my
breath away. Imagine, he ran out of oxygen. After that, he dug a hole and managed to rise another 7 meters. This is real, well, the instinct of self-preservation. When he got out, he saw his fellow diver handing him a regulator so he could breathe. When he surfaced, the air in his body expanded and he became 4 times his normal size. How? What?
I don't get it. Again, look, many people here have rewatched this moment. Yes, he surfaced, the air in his body expanded, and he became 4 times his normal size, when, in theory, he should have burst.
Let me hear it. He was in pain. His belly was huge because his stomach had burst. These stories intrigued Richard and Clark, and they wanted to see for themselves, even though they were not experienced cave divers. On November 23, 1983, they descended into Jacob's well and reached the third chamber, which had a large opening. Richard removed his tank to fit through the opening and began to crawl inside, holding the tank in his hands. As Clark removed his tank and tried to crawl through, he saw Richard's face and noticed that he no longer had a tank and was gasping for air. Clark quickly handed him a regulator and let him breathe. They began passing the regulator back and forth as they crawled out and somehow managed to squeeze through the narrow opening into the third chamber. They then began to head for the exit until they heard the startling sound of the oxygen tank slapping. Not only did this mean that they had hit the wall with the tank and were going the wrong way, but the tank was almost empty. They realized they were in a false chimney in the first chamber, a tunnel that looked like it led to the surface but was actually a dead end. Clark managed to swim to the surface and take a breath, swimming an incredible 75 feet in one go. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Richard, who stayed behind and drowned. When Clark called the police for help, instructor Don himself arrived and was shocked to see his students there. There's a naked cave. That's crazy, I think. What are we watching?
Listen, that's awful. You're so emotional. You care, right? I'm in shock. I've heard these stories, but I'm such a simple animation. I'm like,
Wow, yeah, I'm
really scared for the guy. Stories, man, that can really make you claustrophobic. On
August 30th, 2005, a group of 5 friends decided to go to Gollum Cave, which is also called the Death Cave because of its danger. They got to the entrance at 3 a.m. and one of the friends said,
never go into a naked cave at 3 a.m. unless you want to meet Haggy Woggy and the evil boogeyman. If the place you and your friends are going to is called the Cave of Death, the Valley of Doom, the Forest of Doom, then don't go there. You don't need to go in the forest.
because, well, it's not, well, those names are given for a reason. And decided to wait for the others outside. When they tried to enter, they encountered their first problem. They had to wade through a small pool of water. Then they saw a fork and went left, which led them to another small pool of water. The seemingly harmless pool of water actually led to another part of the cave through an underwater tunnel. The tunnel itself was very small, only 3 to 4 feet in diameter, and in order to get through it, you had to completely submerge yourself in water. So only one person could go into the tunnel at a time, and they had to swim about 15 feet. One by one, they dove into the pool to get to the other side of the cave, and when they did, something did in theirs.
Not much room. An airplane's going to fly by and you can hear it. Yeah, that's fine. Whatever. An airplane flies. Who cares?
Okay, let's go.
I have dogs barking. People are in there. Cars are honking. There's a boom. People are, well,
About 3 feet of free space. The friend who stayed outside heard no sound or light from the cave, and after a while,
he brought some more concrete and decided to barricade himself.
he started to worry. He went into the cave but heard and saw nothing. Not knowing what to do, he first called his friends who were into speleology, and then he called the police. He couldn't imagine what was going on inside. The 4 friends who entered the cave probably realized that the air in those feet of open space was bad. How? Do you think? Lungs are what we call air with the wrong balance of gases. That is, it has more carbon dioxide and less oxygen. This reduces the ability to think, move, and breathe properly, making a return journey through the narrow tunnel very risky. They tried to get out one by one, but the first one to dive in could not find the exit because he did not have enough air. This happened because the increased carbon dioxide levels made it impossible for him to hold his breath and think clearly. After 30 to 60 seconds, the second one dived in and found the first one, and so on, until they were all stuck in the tunnel. The police arrived. They tried to pump in oxygen and drain the water, while relatives and friends waited anxiously outside the cave. Unfortunately, it was all in vain. The bodies were later recovered and the entrance to the cave was cemented. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one, please join.
Oops, oh my, I feel so uneasy. Like it if you want more. There are a lot of these episodes.